what I think the world of true crime is lending toward and prefers right now is a personal connection. So we have that personal connection, and we are a voice that can speak about it. I've said so many times in these projects that I've set out to do, which is, we want to do something good for the world, something good for the community, something that makes a difference. And it's not just, a story, but it has some kind of, we want to connect it with some kind of impact. And the fact that we might actually have this extraordinary impact, I'm so touched by it. And I feel like it's just the beginning of what's possible.
Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And this is an Indie Talk takeover featuring my good buddy and co-founder Nicholas Buggs and the one and only Andrea Shreeman. Andrea, Nick, say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
What's up, folks?
Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Well, it's really great to see you. What? Oh,
I feel like I messed up already. Hi, guys.
No, there's no messing up on this podcast. It's easy peasy. Don't worry.
There isn't. I liked it, Chris. I liked when she said gentlemen. It made me feel good.
Oh, right on. Hello,
when is the pause due?
9.5 months.
9.5 months. We like pregnant pauses. They're okay. They add emphasis to the drama, like a little pause EP. That's okay.
Pause EP. I'm sorry.
The big drama of today.
That's right. It's all good. It's all good.
Folks, I'm on limited sleep. This can get wacky today. But
get wacky? Bro, I think we're in wacky zone right now, and it's all good. I'm loving it. Like it's only going to go up from here. So let's go. Let's make it happen.
I agree. So Andrea,
yes.
Tell us something we should know about you. What do we know you for? What might we know you for? What are you working on now? What are you excited about? Talk to us.
Yeah. How would you know me? Well, I mean, the shiniest thing on my resume is that I was on the executive producing team of a film that won Sundance in 2008. It's called Fuel. And I worked with that filmmaking team, Josh and Rebecca Tickell, 2 other times on other incredible documentaries that are also about Save the Planet, sustainability. And they have another one that is just getting released now called Common Ground, which is incredible. And I had a film that just won a bunch of awards. One of my favorite nominations was, what was it? I don't know, something about like best female filmmaker or something. I got really excited.
That one, yeah.
I was just the best. I was hey, she's the best. So, and that was a film called Side Effect that I actually didn't write, that I directed. That was a thriller, and that was out on the film festival circuit that did really, really well. And that might have been about the time that I met you guys, because that was poppin', and we met at a film festival. And what else? I have the Hero Maker podcast, which is this, I'm co-hosting, which I didn't ever intend to host, which started out as a TV product that then became a podcast and is now about to go into its 3rd iteration. That is a very personal story. 2 of my friends, I was an athlete in college, and 2 of my friends were murdered when I was in college. Downer. And then the story had never been told. And I just at a certain point was like, hey, how come that story hasn't been told? And so I took it upon myself to kind of be the engine, drive that story. And we're going into season 3 right now on that podcast as it is. And I can't imagine another way that you might know me. I was a villain on Diagnosis Murder once, back when I was an actress. That was fun.
Well, I do want to ask you, just like podcaster to podcaster, how is it going on the Hero Maker podcast? What's been the experience? Because there were a lot of people who had these sort of teleplays written out, and they had these story Bibles written out for television, and then COVID hit. And we even have interviewed a few on this podcast where it's like, okay, let me pivot that into a full production podcast. So I assume that's what happened with you. Is that correct?
No, that's not exactly right. Because this is a docuseries. And it is not, we're doing it as an interview show, and it was never designed. I mean, it's not exactly right, but I did have the good fortune of, I had a development deal. I had it during the pandemic. It was in 2021. We took this show to many streamers, 20. I had and we had these pitch meetings that were on Zoom for the first time, or some kind of, video platform. And it was a great experience. I met a lot of incredible development folks and at some great companies, and still am in touch with a lot of those people, looking at like other things that we can do together. But then when no one bought it, and the company that I had the development deal with, really wonderful small company called Insurrection Media, they didn't know there was going to be an actual insurrection when they named the company.
Yeah.
They kind of all disappeared. All the other executive producers, there were 4 other executive producers, were like, okay, we didn't sell it, do. And they went on. And then that's when I thought, well, I feel like I'm responsible for this, shepherding this story. I'm the one who's connected to it in some way. And these people deserve to have their story told. And so I looked at how to revamp it. And I will tell you this one thing. I looked at who were the most compelling characters that I was going to interview or had pre-interviewed. And I had asked a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist at the Washington Post who covered my friend's murders for 15 years, would you host this podcast? And he said yes. And then I asked my friend who I was at school with at GW when these murders happened, George Washington University in Washington, D.C., who went on to become a cop because of what happened, and is just an exemplary. She became a head of a sex crimes unit. She was multiple times a chief in different jurisdictions. She's now Vermont's commissioner of public safety. She's like, I like to say, Vermont's top cop. I asked her if she would co-host with Tom, and she was a yes. They met, the sparks, everything was great. And then we went back to Tom when we were ready to start recording episodes, and he said, I'm so sorry. This was like September of 2022. He said, I'm so sorry. I have not seen my family for a month because I've been covering the January 6th trials, and there's no way that my wife is going to let me spend time with you when I'm not coming home for dinner. And so,
wow,
who needs a wife?
Chris.
Right,
well, that's actually nice to hear a man say. That's a whole other topic, a whole other podcast. It's really nice to hear a man say that.
Really? I was just joking, but yeah.
I saw your ballad that you played on the interwebs the other day. Is this related?
Oh, no. That's just, like I said, Bored Ape. You know what? You know how sucky Instagram is? Let me tell you something.
How sucky is it?
How sucky is it? Yeah,
it's sucky. I tried to put a caption that said Bored Ape because I thought it was hilarious, and it wouldn't let me type it.
I saw it in the comments though. Or you said
because there is Bored Ape. There's a Bored Ape NFT, and I think is what it was, or either that or it has a racial connotation, unfortunately. And I had to type a 0 for the O.
Yeah,
in bored.
I saw it. No, it still came across
to let it. Yeah, and it just sucks. Like you have to. Like I hear there's like all these words now that like sort of deplatform you. Like if you type white, you have to like put an asterisk in for the I. In white.
You have to say nationalist so they know what you're talking about. You can't just say white.
It's weird. It's like there are like these words you can't type shot, like SHOT. You can't type that. Like all these words that like aren't 4-letter words per se. Right. The words that trigger, like you can't use them. It's so interesting to me.
Incredibly
I was like, okay,
story.
Whatever.
That's my incredibly
let's shift back.
I like tributaries.
I do want to give props though to Jennifer Morrison.
Do it.
Who is Vermont's top cop. She's awesome.
She is. She likes bacon. Wait, is that going to get us deplatformed? Is bacon going to get us deplatformed?
Give it a few years. But right now we're okay. In the future, Nick's going to wonder why you can't just like type in your name and see your episode on YouTube, and we're going to find out because you said
bacon nationalist
on the podcast. I have a story that would take us completely off the rails, so I'm going to hold that and go back to the compelling story about the journalist who needed to keep his wife and our lovely co-host, John.
That's your next book, Nick. The journalist who needed to keep his wife.
There you go.
So then we just kind of, I went to my advisory board, which is, some smart people I know, and said, should I host the podcast? And they were all like,
so you jumped, wait. So you jumped right in. Like you didn't even have any reservations. Like you didn't think to look anywhere else. You were
my reservations were he's not going to do it. No, we had so much set up. It was September. We're launching the podcast in October. We were like ready to record. We had
there was
all
no time to find another journalist.
Well, no, I did. I actually interviewed a few people, talked to some people I knew, like did some due diligence, and I went back to them and I said, what do you think? And they were like, we think it's really good, actually. We think it's going to help the podcast. We think there's going to be, because you guys have a great rapport. And that was when we kind of solidified, okay, part of the conceit is going to be this. Shreeman, that's me. Yeah, that'll solve all your problems, Chris. Just call me Shreeman. Shreeman, you've been doing all that. You've done 2 years of research. All Jennifer knows is like the highlights of like, the big moments that happen. She doesn't know any of these people. Why don't you come in and start introducing the story to this cop who has a connection to the story, Jennifer, and then she'll ask the smart questions because she's a police officer. And it really got us really far through, like at least a season and a half of her wanting to pursue answers and kind of like directing a lot of like, who do we need to talk to next to fulfill her curiosity? And it was a really, really cool conceit and structure. So that's the very long, unnecessarily long explanation of how we went from we were going to be a TV show and now we're in this phase called the Hero Maker podcast. The other thing I'll say is when we were pitching it as a TV show, it was called The Long Arm of Darkness. And it had much more of a salacious, look at the killer, which we never wanted to do because it's very, very personal and that didn't feel right. But there's more of I think there's an awareness now that a lot of brands are backing away to some degree from that and taking more of a compassionate approach. But at the same time, they're still playing the music that gets you all hyped up about the killer, so that's part of the dramatic nature of telling those stories. That allowed us to go, you know what we want to focus on? We want to focus on the heroes. We want to look at who are the hidden heroes in not only the story of what happened to our friends and everyone in this like 360-degree view. I mean, we talked to the guy, the jury foreman on their trial. We talked to family members. We talked to the district attorney. We talked to judges. We talked to the defense attorney, the guy who defended our friend's killer in court when there was a 1 in 7 billion chance based on DNA that this guy did it, which he did. And
wow.
And we talked to him, and that was a little scary for Jen because she was like, hey, you're either for Rachel and Warren or you're against them. So she was like, but then she kind of was like, oh, but like, we have to have this conversation. It was really a great conversation. But then we also decided we need to make their deaths not be in vain. Like we want to make sure that we're leaving some kind of wisdom for the future of law enforcement and public safety and the criminal justice system. We're just two people asking questions, but let's dig and let's bring in some of the people that Jennifer knows from 30 years in law enforcement and start gathering all the wisdom we can. And that's been the two things we didn't expect was one, all the healing that we would get, which we've gotten so much healing. And we get feedback from a lot of people that it's a very healing approach and they're breathing sighs of relief and, some closure and from their events or from this particular event. I do want to say we're on the precipice of being able to announce We don't know if it's going to happen yet, but we're about 5 weeks away from finding out if there's going to be a $2 million grant that came out of our podcast to do two things. This is for the state of Vermont, because that's where Jen has the most power. One, to work with police officers to bring them more mindfulness and self-awareness and work with their autonomic nervous system to kind of slow down. And it's been proven to reduce the number of police-involved shootings. It's a wonderful program by an organization called Center for Counsel. And then the other thing that's part of the grant is working with the prison population to help prepare them for coming out and actually leading as productive, peaceful lives as possible when they get out of prison. And I was so blown away when I heard that this is a likelihood. We don't know for sure yet, but it's very close to happening. I just was so touched because I've said so many times in these projects that I've set out to do, which is, we want to do something good for the world, something good for the community, something that makes a difference. And it's not just, a story, but it has some kind of, we want to connect it with some kind of impact. And the fact that we might actually have this extraordinary impact, I'm so touched by it. And I feel like it's just the beginning of what's possible.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Huge congratulations are in order for everything you've been able to accomplish, including hopefully, fingers crossed, this forthcoming $2 million grant. The genre category you're in is so popular, the sort of true crime genre in podcasting. It really took off, maybe around 2014-ish with Serial and some others that came out around the same time. And when I talk to people about what they like about it, for women in particular, it is literally this thing where the podcast teaches them what things not to be doing to avoid getting murdered and raped. And so in that spirit, are you open to telling us in the audience how these two murders took place? What was the context? Because I think there's a lot of people who love true crime that would say, okay, how did these two women get into this situation?
It was college sweethearts. It was a man and a woman. So it was a baseball player and a female soccer player. And they were college sweethearts. Okay. And it was around Christmas time, like it was right before finals. And they were at one of the bars that, so we went to school in Washington, D.C., where the legal drinking age at the time was 18. And so we would go out legally. And they left the bar that Saturday night. I believe it was like December 3rd. And were never seen again. And the very next day, there was a baseball practice. And question marks went up because these two folks were like, they were church-going college students, and they were both athletes, and they had to get up early the next morning to go to church with Warren's family. And it was a big question mark when he didn't make it to the practice. And then she didn't show up for work, I think. Maybe she had like a Sunday shift or Monday or something like that. Monday. And I mean, people were like, they knew something bad had gone down. And we were hoping beyond hope that like they maybe eloped or something, but still, yeah, it just seemed very unlikely. Their bodies were discovered on Tuesday in a field on the Dulles, what became, or I don't think it was at that time, it was the Dulles Toll Road, but there was no, there were no developments on it. So just outside, it was Reston, Virginia, just outside of DC. And it was a absolute horrific crime involving rape and involving, it was just very dark. You can hear more about it on our podcast for sure. We actually interviewed a survivor who survived one of these really vicious attacks by this particular serial rapist and serial killer.
So this was a serial killer, serial rapist that did it.
Well, the thing is, at that time, DNA was very new. And so they collected, they're very, very smart. What really helped this case go from, being solved eventually and then being adjudicated. And this guy received the death penalty in 2 states. He's the one of like 10 criminals in the history of marked history of United States to be on death row in 2 different states.
How does that work though, Andrea? Like, how do you give somebody the death penalty in 2 states?
So he was caught and convicted for a crime in California that happened like 18 months after my friend's murder. Very similar, very dark, grotesque. 3 people were kidnapped 3 women kidnapped at the same time, 3 men, 3 perpetrators. Only one of them was killed by this guy. The other 2 were stabbed multiple times, but not to death, and survived. And you can hear that very chilling interview on our podcast as well. That's Star Witness. I think it's like episode 12. And I spoke with the district attorney who's now a judge in California who got him on death row in California, and he went to San Quentin. At many, many years later, I think it was like he ended up getting into prison by like 95. And then a couple years later, 2000 maybe, they did required, I think it had something to do with the Patriot Act. They required everyone who was a capital criminal, so everybody on death row or everyone in California, I'm just misremembering some of these specific details, to get DNA tested. And when he was tested, all of a sudden, bing, 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 all these other murders lit up. So he was a serial killer after the fact kind of thing. Right. Nobody knew that all these murders were connected and related. And he had committed crimes on the West Coast and the East Coast. So our friends were killed on the East Coast, but he had like family and a life on the West Coast. And so to answer your question directly in terms of, how do you protect yourself from a guy like this? This guy was highly indiscriminate. He killed people from the ages of 15 to 75. Every color, black, brown, Caucasian. He stalked some people. There's proof of that. I would just say, for this, it's about trusting, I think, your gut and your intuition of like bad vibes, good vibes. That's probably the best thing I can say about this particular person. Because people have mentioned him as being very evil, some of the darkest, but he also was kind of a little bit of a chameleon. Like we talked to a police officer who interviewed him for a different sexual assault before Rachel and Warren's death occurred. And the guy was like, he was totally casual. He kind of like, the cops were like, oh, well, he's got a good alibi. And, so it's hard to say in this particular situation, but we'll let your listening experts listen to our show and tell us what they come up with.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that, on the nature of the podcast.
Can I ask you a question, Nick? Because in my mind, I was thinking about the death penalty. That's death penalty in name only, I guess, right? Like, is it a Weekend in Bernie situation where you give the guy the chair in California and then drag his dead body across?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
so Nick, put a pin in your thing.
And then put him in another chair? Like what
okay, no. Let me explain.
Why do we do stuff like this? It's so stupid.
There is no death penalty left in California anymore. The prisoners are, even the ones who were on death row, are now considered condemned. You're not supposed to say death row. They're condemned.
Yep.
California stopped executing people way before this guy ever made it to, quote, death row. So even though he was on death row, he was never going to be executed. So Virginia, this is incredible. They had to do like a sweetheart deal with the governors. It was Schwarzenegger, and I'm forgetting the guy who was the governor in Virginia at the time. Virginia was so committed to having this guy be accountable for his crimes in Fairfax that they extradited him. They pulled him out of prison to go stand trial in Fairfax for his crimes. And and part of the thought process that I've talked to, some of the people who were involved was California's not going to execute him, but Virginia will. Let's go get him. Mm. And they wouldn't have gone to get him if they didn't feel, I don't know what the term is, but like they had a really good chance of putting him away. They gave him, there was a criminal called the DC Sniper.
Yeah, we know about that.
Yep. Muhammad. I don't know if you remember this guy.
Yep. Nick knows about him very well.
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Who, the same guy who defended him, defended this guy that you've never heard of who killed my friends. So they trotted out like the best defense they could possibly find. So that's the answer to that question. Nick, give us what you were going to say.
Yes.
All right. And so mine is a kind of a different perspective. So one of the things that I really enjoy about, I guess you could say, the premise or what the Hero Maker podcast grows into, at least for me, is, there's a lot of this true crime stuff out there. There's even things like Dahmer, right? Where I feel like they're celebrating, the killer. They're celebrating that world.
Yeah.
And everyone in those films ends up being an extra in the backdrop of the killer. And to me, this is the complete opposite. And what I like about this and what it kind of hits my heart is like, you don't really understand, comprehend, or respect the number of people that are impacted by a murder. Forget the fact that this is a serial killer and there's multiple murders, but just consider one murder. You're talking about friends of the people that were murdered who many years later have a podcast to talk about this and then bring it back up, right? You've got the defense attorneys, you have police officers, you have family members, you have the foreman of the jury, you have the jury members. I mean, this is just the number of people that I just mentioned. It probably is double, triple, if not quadruple or sextuple the number of people who are impacted by a single murder. And I think that this, the Hero Maker podcast for me is a reminder. Like, this is not only, death and depravity and something that is just disgusting and you don't wish on anyone, but just the reverberation into society, into people's lives of something like this is something that really, I think everyone should respect and they should understand. And it's something that I really appreciate about what you're doing. And on top of that, I want to say that because that's what I get from it, and I'm hoping that others get from it. I know Chris applauded the idea of the $2 million to support, all sorts of things that, again, have been touched by this. But I applaud the fact that you didn't let this go, right? I mean, how many times did you have an opportunity to say, this is too much, it's not working? We've talked to all these distributors. We've talked to all these people. We even had someone who's going to host the podcast for us and it fell through. You had every right and opportunity to say, this is too much for me. And you didn't do that. And I think that to me is worth applauding. And I think that is a huge lesson that filmmakers who have a story to tell, not just filmmakers who are, who just want to make a film, right? But if you have a story to tell, there's so many different ways that you can do it, whether it's on film, whether it's on a podcast, you could be an artist as in a painter and get your ideas, your thoughts, and your feelings out there. So again, I just want to applaud you for not giving up and really making this piece of art and this piece of history something that we can consume via the Hero Maker podcast.
Thank you so much. And thanks for getting that piece of it too, I accept the acknowledgement about sticking with it. Thank you. I'll let that in. And there's more of a story to tell. I'm in touch with someone on death row or condemned right now who knew our killer in prison and is in for a heinous crime where 2 kids under the age of 5 lost their lives in addition to 3 other people. So it's really interesting to form a relationship with him. But that's just one example. We've got a lot of important things to share. And I think that is a great lesson for people. I definitely, there are other projects in my life that I've been holding on to and feel are important and have not seen the light of day yet, that have taken many, many years to get to where they are, and that I still believe in. And this one, I'll just say it. I feel like there was some strength and some power that I was animated by that was not me. I felt like I had angels on my shoulder, just because there were many, many times when I hit a place where I was very uncomfortable. Like I couldn't say the killer's name when I started working on the project. And when I first talked to one of the defense attorneys, it was such a difficult conversation because he was so demoralized. I mean, by the system. He was just like, it's a shit show. He was just saying how awful our criminal justice system is. And,
right.
I just like, I just broke down after that call, like hung up and was like, oh my God. And, lots of no's, as you said, but I do feel like, I don't know. Yeah. I needed to, this was really important. It was really, really important. Now I will tell you this, financing wise, because I think this is also a really important thing to share, because people sometimes put things down because they don't know how they're going to pay for them. Like, oh, we tried to raise money and we couldn't, or that's why we pitched it to all these people and they didn't want to make it.
Happens all the time.
What am I supposed to do? You know, I have put on quite a bit of my own financial resources behind making sure that this has a really strong season 1 and season 2. But we did raise some money too. Just, a little bit of crowdfunding, not an official thing, just like we had a fiscal sponsor that was a nonprofit that worked with us for those first 2 seasons. And also I had a friend who I was just telling the story. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to launch this podcast. And she was like, she wrote me a $5,000 check just from the conversation.
That's
and
awesome.
I was totally like shocked. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that was a little sign from the universe, like, okay, yeah, somebody thinks this is a good idea. But I did have to cut myself off at a certain point. Like I said, okay, I did all the math and I was like, okay, that's how much money I'm willing to actually take from my own bank account and put into this, and draw the line and go. Now, I still think it needs to go forward. So at that point, I have to either have the sponsorship or a distribution partner. And so I'm in that phase right now. And like I just met with a big partner, potential partner, network partner yesterday. And I think even drawing the line forced me to, look at, not pull back from, well, I could always just pay for it myself. Like really dig in. And after I send 30 inquiries or make 30 calls, not stop. Just be like, well, I don't have the money yet and I still want to tell the story, so I got to keep going. And I like to tell people this marble jar thing. I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's probably like a straight up business thing.
Like the Stephen Covey thing.
I don't know. Is it Stephen Covey? You got the empty jar and you've got 100 marbles in the first jar. And until you get those 100 calls done or those 100, requests. And it's a way to kind of mark your progress and just stay involved in, I got to get the marbles from one jar to the next. And that's the space I'm in right now. And I think it's going to keep going. I'm just not sure. The backup plan is for me to write the book, because at this point I could write the book.
You could probably write the book straight from the words in the podcast if you have it transcribed.
Yeah, I can do a lot of it that way. And then I don't have to pay anybody to do that. I can just do that myself. So that's kind of the backup plan. And it still would be cool to have that be part of the plan. I think, it's solid IP and all that stuff. But thank you so much, Nick, for really getting that. That actually the development executive I met with yesterday said that was the first comment that he made was it really helps you see the ripple effect of sudden violent loss. And it is the thing that I want to drive home to your listeners about that, in case they have been impacted by sudden violent loss or something similar, trauma, is that it is so okay that someone who is not a sibling, is not a parent, was not right there on the first tier of impact, it is so okay that like a friend of a friend, or someone who just sat with that person in class, or someone who was on a team but didn't really talk to that person, could have a huge impact from the trauma of that sudden violent loss. And no matter what your proximity to the people who were hurt, killed, taken from us, your experience of that is valid and deserves attention and healing, no matter where you sit in that universe.
Totally agreed.
Yeah. It's like when you see a car accident and you tell yourself, I'm not going to rubberneck. And you have to kind of look back a little bit just to see the make and model of the car. And then the next thing you do is you scramble as fast as you can through the Rolodex in your mind of who you know that has that make and model. And if you find a match, you normally don't find a match, but when you find a match, the first thing you think is, I hope that isn't so-and-so. I should call so-and-so, make sure they're good. And that's just who we are. And that just goes to show sort of that communal effect of the potential even of having, lost someone in a sudden way, that it can have on us. I do wonder too, how many cases are you interested in taking on? I know sort of offline, we talked about a different case between me and you, but there are a lot of cases out there. And this is kind of what the genre demands almost, is that you sort of close the door on one saga and open the door on a new saga. Are you going to want to do that even if it's not sort of personally affecting you? Or are you going to want to sort of go back into writing and making film?
I think it depends on the, probably, I don't know. I mean, my instinct would say probably not another crime. But for example, one of the police departments that I've come to know as a result of talking to a lot of the folks in law enforcement has approached me about they would like to they want to open up their police department for like an unscripted show, because they're really committed to having the world understand how police departments really work. And I was like, give me a second. Let me see if I can do something about that. Not that I would have to be involved in it completely, but like that to me, somebody came to me and it was something that's like, I just need to talk to a few people and see if that's even doable in my world. But in terms of committing my life to a crime, you did mention that there's a personal aspect. Maybe you didn't exactly say this, but what I think the world of true crime is lending toward and prefers right now is a personal connection. So we have that personal connection, and we are a voice that can speak about it, and it makes a difference. So I would say, if you're on the inside, if you have a personal connection to something, and you want to chronicle it in some way or create your own oral history, that's something that you can very easily like share with the world through technology. And I feel like that is, that's at everybody's fingertips. You could also craft it if you a little bit in the way that suits you, but I'm not sure I see myself doing that. I'm actually not great with these horrific events. Like, I don't watch horror movies. I don't, I made a horror movie. I don't watch things. I don't take in a lot of the, dark news, because I think it's because I'm just so empathetic, and that it gets into my system, and it just, I feel really affected by it. Right. I even turn the volume down on certain things where they start playing me the music that says you're supposed to be scared right now. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that. And so I think it would be, but I would never say never, because that would just be silly, because there might be the something that makes total sense, And I'm definitely not someone who has ever worked for a paycheck. So it's not even like a paycheck that is going to convince me really to do something, in case you're offering me $100,000 to do your show.
Right.
No, all good, all good. So, so what is next for you, Shreeman? What is next? I know you have these courses you're teaching. What else?
Yeah, so I do have a feature that I wrote that I would love to say we're in pre-production for, but like everything's in pre-production now because nothing's being made. So, and I'm really excited about that. Because I have some really cool people who are starting to gravitate toward the project and want to help with it, and casting and all this stuff. So that's fun.
How are you going to navigate it around the strike? Out of curiosity,
we're going to get the script to people while they're doing nothing, and see if we can get some commitments.
Yep, good.
And the script was already written, is what you're saying.
Well, the script has gone through many iterations since I first put pen to paper, which was over 20 years ago. And I've changed a lot. The culture's changed a lot. The story's changed quite a bit. And different people have come and gone over the years. But I got this incredible note like 8 years ago from an Academy Award-winning producer about the script. And I was like, that's a great note, but you know what? That's not what we're doing here. And then 8 years later, I was like, I sent it to another friend who I was like, you know what? I think you should play the lead in this. And she gave me the same note. And her husband has been nominated for an Academy Award, and she helps him write all his stories. So I was like, maybe there's something to this. But instead of just giving me the note, she actually gave me the fix. And I was like, oh my God, it's brilliant. So I literally, after probably 2.5 years of not messing with the script at all, I just did a huge, pulled out a storyline, did a major rewrite. And I'm about to go through a bunch of meetings where I'm kind of talking about, is it done? Which it may or may not be completely done, but I'm really excited that there's, we put fresh energy into it. So there's that. And that is, everybody should always be making something. So that's cool. And it will be the first feature that I have directed and that I will, direct and that I wrote. I mean, I've written other features, but this will be the first one that I will make. And then, yes, I have courses. What I've discovered about teaching, I have my master's, and I teach. I've done a bunch of
correct?
Yeah, from USC. I've done a bunch of different classes over the years. One is called Mastery, and it's for actors and content creators. And it's really it's all process, and it's all you make these business commitments, and you just go in there, and we have a product at the end, and it's 10. I think it's 8 or 10 weeks, and I'm really excited to revive that because I did that a bunch of times, and it's going to be fun. And I've been working with actors a lot through a website called SuperProf. I have a profile on there, SuperProf, professor, and I have a bunch of students now, and I am getting so much joy out of their growth and happiness and learning things. And they're texting me from sets, and it just feels so good doing it. And before I was like, I'll teach if I have to. And now I'm loving it. And I think that part of that is my age. Just I've gotten to a place where it just feels really good to take the things that I have learned over my decades and, contribute them. And then the other class that is launching, these are launching the first week of October, and they're very small classes, 10 people each, is I'm doing, right now it's called Wake Up and Write, but I think it's going to be something more Writer's Circle or something. And I'm combining one of my longtime loves, which is I'm a level 3 trained counsel facilitator, which is you sit in a circle, pass a talking piece, and only one person's talking, everyone else is listening. It's a very transformative environment when people are in focused listening, non-judgmental listening. And then we're kind of going in and out of that circle experience online. And then people spend 20 minutes working on their material, come back to the circle, see what kind of themes are developing for the group, and help people really contact the deeper intent and meaning and like sole purpose of what they're writing at the time. So I'm really excited about that one because that's a new course that I'm launching that, will be fun to play with the group and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so much there, and I think that's just, it's a true example. Like both of those are really true examples of the fact that you continue to give back, through your skills and through your art. So that's why, again, like the Hero Maker podcast and everything that you do, it has that theme in it that, it's more than you, right? It's about a community of people who can benefit from your history, your experiences. So I think that's super cool. And I think you mentioned Super Prof, but, just to make sure that people, our audience knows exactly how to get there, could you just kind of just tell them how to find you out there on the interwebs?
I think it's superprof.com, I think. And then my name, Andrea Shreeman. But my website is where the courses are offered, and it's Prudent Pictures, spelled like it sounds, .com/courses. But there's not a lot of stuff on the website. So just go to Prudent Pictures. And I think if you probably shouldn't Google me because you might find some weird stuff, but just go to Prudent Pictures.
In other words, everyone's going to Google you now.
Yeah, exactly. And Chris and Andrea, I just had to mention that we were talking about IG earlier and the stuff you can't post. And I've been holding on to this one since Andrea said it, but I'm like, me personally, I would personally get blocked by IG if I tried to post a picture with the caption, I'm going to read it, "The Long Arm of Darkness." Like that would not work for me. That's going to get blocked.
Blocked immediately. Deplatformed.
Deplatformed.
Account suspended.
It's suspended indefinitely. I cannot do that.
What you just did to my mind is inappropriate. Completely inappropriate of you, Nick.
Just saying. You brought it up. I was like, nope.
Nope.
Nick is good at saving things.
We can't. Yeah, we can't help what the robots and the algos think. You know what I mean? Like,
right, exactly.
They have dirtier minds than we do.
I think we can. I don't know about that.
Dirty algos.
Dirty algos.
But speaking of the dirty algos, where can people find you on social media?
Prudent Pictures on IG and Andrea Shreeman. Those are my things.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Well, just look, this has been a blast. Like, I just want you to keep going so we can follow this path, see what you're up to, watch you succeed in all these different areas. Folks, if you have, any interest in the genre, podcasting, filmmaking, and you heard the sincerity in the words that Andrea dropped on us today, I mean, you know what to do. Go find the Hero Maker podcast, subscribe, listen, find the crowdfunding, give some dollars, send it that way. Tell a friend about the podcast. And, it goes such a long way. And I can just say as a podcaster myself, like, I think people, there are misapprehensions by the general public about podcasting. One, and the first one that I think frustrates me and Nick the most, maybe frustrates the wrong word, but we hear it a lot, which is that, you just sit down and press record on your phone and just start talking, and that's a podcast. Wrong. Like, there is a burn rate that goes. There is money that's outgoing if you actually want to be good at it. And I think the second thing is that you don't just get listeners overnight. Like, you have to be super consistent. The audience has to know you're showing up at a certain time and a certain day, and you're going to keep dropping episodes. So I think all of that comes with an expense. It comes with a dedication that's worthy of the following you have and the future following you can get hopefully through our audience as well. So, Andrea, this has been tremendous. Andrea, whatever. It's been
Thanks for having me, guys. Shreeman. You're amazing. Your bougie podcast is amazing.
This is awesome.
Great to see you.
Our luxury cast.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right.
And for those who want to subscribe to us, you know how to do it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We have an incredible YouTube page. Thanks to all the hard work of the team here at the Make It Podcast. If you want to reach out to us, that's easy. contact@bonsai.film. That's an email address. You know what to do there. If you want to reach out to Nick directly, you can find him at nick@bonsai.film. Drop him a line.
That's
Nick at the long arm of darkness.
New handle.
Long arm of Nick at the long arm of darkness. You can ask him about what shade of blue that is on his t-shirt. And you can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Flame in Your Heart. You're spelled U-R. I respond to all those comments, even if they're terrible. I will respond to you very kindly. Our newsletter, bonsai.film/subscribe. That's a free newsletter. We do it every 2 weeks. It's incredible. It is not an aggregated newsletter where we just pluck out stories from somebody else and pop them in our newsletter. We really find the esoteric and try to bring it to you, something you can really actually use. That can be articles, it could be software, it could be tools, it could be discounts to film festivals, you name it. So our newsletter is thebomb.com. So you should definitely check it out. And so with all that said, Nick, can you leave us with the credo?
Yes, sir. And one of the things that I will have to say is that I love that our guest today embodies our credo, which is be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, Andrea, talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Ciao.
We'll do it again.
All right.
Bye,
Peace.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Be good. Thanks.